want to introduce my fellow panellists for this. Kim Vernon, the Senior Manager E-Curriculum at ACARA, Australian Curriculum Assessment and Fully Authority, and Sue Key, the Chair of Robotics Australia Group. Welcome to both of you, and I think we'll have a pretty lively discussion here. Okay, just by way of background, the Unceasing Social Media Ban has bipartisan support, resonates with many parents, but of course the prospect is not very popular with young people who see it as a move to take something away from it. Is there a better way of framing this whole debate? And have we put the emphasis on the wrong things around it? So key, the late 60s, when I was at school, was in an era of nationally banned books, some of which were not really suitable for kids at all, to be honest, but they were being banned at a national level in terms of preventing imports of them. And I think we all had a sort of massive dose of FOMO, fear of missing out. Bans have gone down pretty badly with the people who are subjected to it. What's your view? I mean, have we gone about this? I'm not saying to restrict the information online is a bad idea, but just the way it's publicly messaged, what do you think?
Well, I don't know that there's much choice about how you message it, because it is about restricting access at the end of the day. And you're right, bans probably can provoke an emotional response and even a retaliatory response where it just encourages people more to explore the things that they're not allowed to engage with. But I think there's no denying that there are harms created by social media, and we've been very effective at mitigating those harms, so protecting our people from social media. That a ban's probably one of the only tools at disposal. I mean, I think no one should lose sight of the fact, though, that the solution to this problem actually is in the hands of platforms creating the content. But because no actions they take by platforms, the Australian government has taken this action, but we'll need to have an action ban. But just as we ban young people from having access to cigarettes, young people from having access to alcohol, and when we were younger, it was a lot more permissive. A lot of these could go down to the product shop or across to the corner store and buy a pack of cigarettes because there weren't any, real. There wasn't a reason for shopkeepers to actually abide by regulations at that time. So I don't know, it has to be a balance, but at the moment I think we are where we are because there have been no other effective mitigation strategies against the risks that are posed to our young people.
Well, I think instead I just say we actually need physically discourage kids from being online, and the mental health issues is one of the area that's caused about it. And then we have deep fakes and degree of misinformation, which will be confusing for young kids. I'm just wondering, you mentioned there about bringing in other strategies as well as the ban, and that's where it's great to have Key Gear on the panel as well, because with your background in ACARA, should we be promoting there being a complementary, if you like, program for the under 16s that tries to give them the skills, because inevitably they'll be 18 and they'll be on the internet and they'll be on social media, these particular platforms. And maybe, and I'm going to ask you this, maybe we need to also give some support to teachers, because I think a lot of teachers struggle online with dealing with SAP parents as well. But tell us a bit what ACARA devises now, and what do you think about the idea of packaging it, what you've got now in form for this particular issue?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Look, education's a bit of the complex space in that there's so many layers that the teachers either have to access or have access to. So obviously we've got policy that sits at the top there, but we do have the Australian curriculum, which was reviewed through and published in 2022 as an updated version. And there was a lot of work in the lead up to that review, and online safety was certainly a big topic, which started way back in 2013 when we had the Royal Permission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. And one of the recommendations in that report at the end of 2017 was to look at a comprehensive online safety curriculum. We obviously can't just go out and start changing curriculum willy-nilly. We need the green line to be pushed by our ministers to be able to do that. So we needed a bit of a solution until we were able to review the curriculum. And what we did was we worked with the Safety Commissioner, a number of partners across the country, looked into research, and we did develop an online safety curriculum connection. So what that does is sort of takes the load off teachers a little bit with the complexity that exists in this space to say, look, here's all the parts of the curriculum that you pull together if you want to teach this to your students. During the review, we did international studies in this space. We also looked at national research as well, and we redeveloped the curriculum to now include a digital literacy general capability. Slightly different to the ICT general capability that we used to have, where it draws more on the critical thinking that our students do need now. We also updated that curriculum connection, but one thing that the digital literacy general capability does is it really gives teachers the understanding of all the pieces to the puzzle that come into play when we are looking at this topic. Things such as health and wellbeing to start with. So how do we teach students, how do we model to students what does wellbeing look like? We also have that complex space so that we don't just write a curriculum for our city kids. So we had quite a complex demographic and geographic space in this country where some of our students sit under mango trees and that's their classroom. So really trying to write a curriculum that really provides teachers with an understanding of all of those contexts on how do we teach students in this space was our starting point. And the Safety Commissioner is a big partner of ours. We certainly don't want to be sending mixed messages out there to our teachers in this space. So what research do they have? What resources do they develop? And how do we draw that together for teachers as well?
So Key, do you see, you mentioned that the ban itself was just one tool. Do you see education as a key tool and support during this ban as another tool? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I have heard the ban actually will stimulate the growth of some platforms, particularly education platforms, that do not cause harm. So, I mean, is there anyone in this room who hasn't learned something from YouTube, right? It is a really good learning tool, but it needs to be able to be defined in a safe manner. And it is the key. If we do not allow kids to get access to the type of learning that they, do engage with. So, I mean, well, hopefully it's something that this will start is proliferation and alternatives to, the channels that currently provide safe avenues for children to access them.
Yeah, well, there is, to my understanding with YouTube, people can still watch YouTube content when they're not logged in, but they can't apparently watch adult content. So I don't think it's really cutting kids off altogether on YouTube because it does provide a lot of good educational material. No doubt about it. And their parents, if they, depending on the relationship with their parents, they might be able to do that as well.
All right, so, just as you mentioned, a lot of the burden of making sure that teenagers and younger children are exposed to harm falls on parents and teachers. And hopefully what we will see are support tools that are developed so that it will help parents and teachers so that kids can still access those educational opportunities but are also subjected to harm. So I don't think we do it enough to make it easier for parents and teachers to be able to engage efforts. So, for example, it has been mentioned that there's not quite even such a big bad because kids will just be able to access area they are through VPNs, and MFS will be more technologically savvy beneficiaries. And that all holds true, but they will be doing to make it easier for parents and teachers to navigate these troubled waters?
Personally, I mean, I agree. I think personally, I'd like to see the government message this as, yeah, we're going to impose these restrictions in the van, but we're going to give you things too. It's not really about trying to deprive you of things. We're trying to actually make it possible for you to have a better life, if you like, by being aware of all these pitfalls, because inevitably, just as you can drive on the roads, you'll be able to be on full social media. So we might be taking away the forgiving, and I'm kind of frustrated in a way that we don't kind of couch it more in those tools. And you mentioned some of the technical things, and in my view, the work or the availability of material for CARA, for students, parents and teachers, is a more important issue than all the media attention which has been on the age assurance trial. And that is for a couple of reasons. I mean, there is already a lot of tools out there for age assurance that might involve really fancy biometrics or hand gestures, movements to determine age. We've got a shiny new My ID system in Australia. We're well placed to give people lots of options already. And as a journalist, it's frustrated me that so much of the media attention on whether this ban will work has been on the age of assurance testing, which of course will provide mechanisms to the social media companies to take up and recommendations, presumably. I think the emphasis should be on the curriculum that goes with it. Now, you mentioned the one area where technically things are difficult is virtual private networks, VPNs, because as we know, there has been a kind of technology race to be able to use VPNs, and by the companies that provide VPNs to not be detected as VPNs. But I'm just wondering whether it's that big an issue. There's certainly kids that will go in that direction, but we've had Netflix, for example, and over the last decade or so, they've had to deal with people using VPNs to see different content in different parts of the world, and also to pay much less fees for Netflix in parts of the world where the fees are set low. And while Netflix hasn't been able to overcome this, it's still managed to have a business. Do you see these technical issues as really potentially undermining what we're trying to do, or do you think we can live with them? Let's start with Sue and then Kim.
Yeah, I think you always need to find workarounds, but it does create a bit of an activation barrier. You have to be a bit determined to be able to overcome the barriers to get access to things. So, I mean, just that in itself is good, but the whole hypocrisy around social media ban is just a great way to start having a conversation.
Not just with children, young teenagers, but also in community about what heck is acceptable, rather than, being passive recipients of a lot of content from overseas, starting to, making more deliberate choices about how we engage with social media.
Kim, do you think that if we did couch it differently and promote the educational value and what can be achieved, whether a number of kids would start to see, well, look, it's not really about beating the ban, it's about actually addressing the issues on social media?
Yeah, look, and I think that's what the curriculum already tries to do. We do have a bit in there where we try to challenge students thinking around this space. There's only, at some point we have to put the tools into the hands of the students. So the curriculum is written in a way that we can teach digital technologies and we can teach the digital literacy in what we call an unplugged or analog space. But there's only so long you can be good at air guitar. And then we want to put the guitar in the hands of the kids. And that's what the curriculum aims to do, is to build their cognitive strength, their mental resilience in this, their understanding, and giving them the confidence to challenge what is being put in their hands. And then hopefully as they move through, that sort of develops along the way to give them that understanding so that when the tools are put in their hands, they have those skills, those dispositions that they need to use when they are faced with challenging situations. We only have the students in our four walls for so many hours a day, and as Sue said, we then send them out into the wild and into their families. So schools definitely have a certain place, but we need to work together for both with society as well as families to sort of move through this.
Yeah, I'm hoping too that you could have kids in a class look at how they're emotionally triggered when they're on social media. So they go onto Facebook, there's some horrible event, well not necessarily that, but some apparent outrage in part of the world that actually really hasn't any impact on the laws. It might be terrible, but is it, you know, we actually trigger those emotions all the time, and then they're involved in making comments and feeling that, but really are they making any impact by that? And maybe if kids can see how they're emotionally manipulated to remain on those networks and become advertising fodder, I suppose, for reels, and that would help. So you've been a really strong advocate for sovereignty issues, and when you look at the ban at the moment with some of the companies there, Meta companies, Meta Services, Facebook, Instagram, Elon Musk, X, and there's of course TikTok and Snapchat and YouTube now, but particularly Meta and X, they've wound back their fact checking. Then basically, or when they're monitoring of dangerous content, they've basically made it very clear that they're not particularly, this is not an issue that they're prepared to put resources to. Do you think we need to, and we can't do much about it across here, do you think we need to start to look at local social media platforms or ways that we can have at least some control around these issues ourselves?
Yeah, definitely, and obviously I know for the ban might actually generate some activity in that area and act as impetus for companies to take on the challenge of its major platforms, because I think people are getting tired of the type of content that is being mandated by these platforms, and there are other countries in the world that are looking at how you can de-platform and become less reliable on some of these major entities. And as we're seeing with President Trump's recent executive order around AI, where he has mandated that there should be no woke AI models, we are now very much vulnerable to poisoning of the type of models and platforms that they were accepting. And while it's very difficult now that these companies are in many cases much larger than countries, and as you say, we have little influence or impact on their actions, I think the choice that we can make is to disengage from those platforms and look at how we can develop more local content. I guess that's more consistent with our values.
Yeah, it's not as if we haven't been able to do this successfully. I was in Perth a few weeks ago staying with a friend, and the guy who lives at the back happened to be the founder of Moodle, which is a big platform used, as you would know, in tertiary education. He makes it available. It's available as a federated system, so areas or universities can have their own implementations of it. So Australia's already done this. It's not as if we're incapable of doing it. And there's another platform in Perth, I can't remember its name, but it's used in some schools, and it's Boy Kids Social Behaviour Platform Alternative. It's not as if, it's not rocket science to suggest that we can't, we can do these sorts of...
Because I add to that jurisdictions and schools are investing in building their own sort of closed platforms, I guess, in a way. That does come at the cost of duplication. If our jurisdictions and schools are not talking to each other, we end up with a myriad of platforms down there, and we've got a number of organisations and businesses here at this conference who are in that space trying to build those closed systems for schools to work in. It then becomes really confusing for schools and particularly teachers as to, well, what do I best in, what's right for us type conversation as well.
Well, probably that needs some good kind of coordination if it's ever possible to do that too, because it could be ramped up as a kind of passion network, but I can see that there's other public companies and other interests involved in it. But it all seems possible. The one thing that's going for this in education is that if I was to start a social media network, there'd probably be about 5 people, you know. But if an education community does that, and you know, have students and I don't know, parents and teachers or whatever, but students and maybe the ballet clubs that they go to, the ballet classes, their local sporting clubs, it'll be a sizable network of people. I don't think that's an issue in education. So maybe that's something that needs to be on the minister's radar too, or the government's radar, in trying to encourage those independent platforms that maybe a CARA could potentially tap into that as well.
I think we have a lot of talented teenagers who we could put towards solving this issue, developing digital platforms that are attractive to them.
And that is part of the curriculum. So the aim of the digital technologies curriculum is to design digital solutions. That is the end game. It's a computational systems design thinking curriculum. It's not about coding. It's about the whole solution as well.
Yeah, so if teenagers are really concerned about what they're using our leisure behaviour, we could, you know, have our own straight TikTok developed.
Well, I think that's a great idea too. I mean, we've been talking at this conference of the need in customer experience to have the clients and government services involved in designing or giving feedback on that. And I can't see why that couldn't apply to these social media networks. So West Australian one is called DigiSocial. There's UZIC, there's a New Zealand one called by Mahi. There's a federated network called Mastodon as well. There's plenty around there. And so I don't think that's a concern. I just thought I might bitch to the E-Safety Commissioner has signalled as well as, I mean, we've concentrated in media so much on this ban, but extending age verification, gatekeeping to areas such as online pornography, gambling, violent content that would be outside that. Are you supportive of this? You know, you're a parent and so on. What's your view about? I mean, we'll go a bit more wider than that ban, so.
Sorry, trust his parental concerns about my children access to gambling. Yeah, I mean, that's true, obviously. Yeah, that does.
Question, I mean, she's going extended beyond looking at 5 organisations.
Well, I mean, if you're an organisation that thinks, you know, it gets pointed out to you, your employees are at risk, then you have to take action. I guess we, you know, as a community, we've been put on notice that these are dangerous, particularly to people who are under 18 age. I mean, I think you know, if nothing else, this ban is going to be a really interesting experiment because, you know, hopefully what we see is in a few years' time a reduction in a level of anxiety about teenagers, a reduction in suicide rate about teenagers. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different factors that contribute to those things, and it might not all be social media, but, you know, this is an opportunity to really see if we can effectively you know, reduce the amount of harmful content that you'll see. We'll be actually see improvements in it. Is going to be if that is the end outcome that we're aiming for, or you achieve that, then what you think?
Absolutely. We're dealing here with young people who are still developing in many ways, socially, emotionally, as well. And we need to guide them through that development in a safe way. So if that means putting a few fences around things and providing a bit more support, then absolutely.
And finally, I've been watching with some trepidation the debate and outrage in the UK about their implementation of age verification. The rationale seems similar to what we're concerned about. There, the age limit is around 18 for a lot of things. It's met with, or was a couple of weeks ago, I was reading about it, a massive backlash, and there was Nigel Farage was involved in the free speech kind of movement and so on. Do you anticipate that sort of backlash there, or is it just that the bricks are a bit different? They probably don't have the My ID kind of regime available for verification that we have. I don't know, but do you expect we'll get that, or is that a very UK kind of response?
We already, I mean, we've got the outrage politics here as much as anywhere, and adults saying, oh, I should have to verify my age. You know, it's like, but you know, all of this here is to trust in government. And unfortunately, I think that people, or what is really showing is that it is scared to have digital ID and things where you might be concerned with your government to track what you're doing. I think people have thought concerns about, and then it gets tied up in a culture of outrage. You know, honestly, it gets very bad for kids' welfare, so every time, but that's another matter. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's all a conversation that we should be having. Why is it that people are so worried about age verification? Because we share so much of our data for free with these social media platforms anyway. You know, because our government, we should actually be able to trust them with this data more than we trust these social media platforms.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at My ID, it's been set up that when a verification occurs, the recipient organisation, as probably just gets a yes or a no without any other data. That was how it was designed. In fact, it seems to be, if it does that, to be really tight. There's not a lot of privacy around it, as you say, because we share everything anyway online. What's your view about the UK and so on?
Look, I agree. We're going to get backlash. We're going to get people challenging any sort of rules or structure that we try and put in place. Having worked in classrooms for nearly 30 years, we get that for 5 years of age. They, you know, people, that conformity, that sort of being told this is the line that you'll walk type action is not easy for some people. And that sense of them wanting to control what they do, what they access, how they view that, will certainly invoke emotions for sure.
Yes, but maybe stick with it. I think government maybe has its work cut out to try and just do a bit of massaging of how this whole process should go and its intentions to get that issue of trust that you talk about. I think that's probably, we've chewed the fat a lot on this issue, and hopefully we've given a different viewpoint about it, and that we want to see a positive way that this is projected, as well as the necessity of a ban, as most Heralds would want. So Kim Vernon and Sue Keep, thank you so much. I think it's been a great discussion. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Chris.